everyone, how are you Scooby-Doo doing? This is the 8th episode of my podcast. We will be discussing the 8th episode of the What's New Scooby-Doo series, which is Safari So Goodi. This is Season 1, Episode 8. I love this episode mainly because of how cute the animals were in this episode. They seem so sweet at the end and I love seeing them play around. I'll be talking about this episode and other things I noticed about the Scooby-Doo series that hopefully you will find interesting as well. You should give this episode a watch if you haven't already, and if you have, you can always rewatch it. The question I've been asked for this episode is, who is my favourite Scooby-Doo villain and why? This is a tough question because I feel like many of us, we have Scooby-Doo villains who have a place in our hearts. I did like Professor Pericles as the main villain in Mystery Incorporated, and I loved the whole arc in the show and having an underlying villain while the gang were dealing with different villains. For the films, I would have to pick the Phantom Virus from Scooby-Doo and the Cyber Chase. I love the whole idea of the Phantom Virus and that the gang gets put into the video game alongside the Phantom Virus. And the baseball puns. I'm saving my favourite villain from What's New Scooby-Doo until we've done all the episodes. Again, just a quick note that the opening scene happened at the beginning of the episode again on my DVD. I'm just documenting it for my own curiosity, and I'm sure no one is that bothered, but I just think it's weird and I wonder if it'll change its order again or not. Anyway, once the opening theme has finished, we get the opening scene, which shows us a camp set up in Africa. We hear a strange sort of music which seems to wake up the people in the tents with a bit of a start. One of the men in the group points out that the music is not of this world, and that it's the demons, and points at the glowing animals, which starts to come out of the bushes. The animals chase them, causing the people to go through a river. The animals stop before the river, the people manage to get themselves onto some rocks to be safe, and then it fades to black. After the opening scene, we see the gang on a tour bus in Africa. Also, we will not be seeing the Mystery Machine in this episode because they wouldn't be able to take it to Africa. They most likely had to fly there, so as a result, the Mystery Machine couldn't come along for the ride. I wonder where Fred puts the Mystery Machine when they go away. He seems very protective of the Mystery Machine to just leave it at his house. Velma explains that there are modern cities all over Africa. They happen to be in Zomba, Malawi, going to the Hatari Game Preserve. Daphne mentions that this is where their video safari begins, and how excited she is to see the animals in real life. Shaggy mentions he's only ever met the animal cracker kind. Daphne mentions that many species from this part of Africa are vanishing, and not just the endangered ones. Daphne explains that she wants to get them all on tape while they still can. I like that Daphne brings a bit of awareness about endangered animals, and that if we don't do something, they may not always be here. Fred is a little bit too excited to try out the features on his camera, and Velma tells him to save it for the animals. A couple overhear the gang say they're on the safari and mention that they're on the safari too. The woman who is Honey Hunsucker tells them that she and her husband, Henry Hunsucker, have been on it 3 times before. Daphne asks them if they've heard about the sudden disappearance of the animals, but they say they haven't heard and that the only thing you need to worry about is the sudden weather changes. As she says that, it suddenly starts chucking it down with rain. Scooby, who had his head out of the window at the time, gets soaked and shakes himself off, causing everyone else to get soaked. They get to the Hatari Game Preserve, and Velma mentions that in Swahili it means danger. Shaggy asks why they couldn't pick a place that means teens eat free. I keep forgetting these characters are meant to be teenagers in this series. I like that they aren't portrayed as the stereotypical teenagers you see on television at the moment. However, watching Mystery Incorporated, you can't mistake them for not being teenagers. The way they're drawn, they look younger, and also they behave like teenagers, having crushes, and also there's some drama, and I do like Mystery Incorporated because of those things, and also the real mysteries that lay beneath Crystal Cove. I think either way, both shows portray the gang differently, and while I like that, I do notice myself forgetting What's New Scooby-Doo, that they're teenagers and not adults. Especially because they always seem to be alone with no adults, and they go off to places like Africa, which I feel like a lot of teenagers I knew when I was at that age hardly ever did that, and if they did, they would be on holiday with their family. I just find it interesting when you look at the differences. Anyway, back to the episode. They all get off the bus, and immediately Shaggy is surrounded by younger animals trying to get his sandwich. He halves it and throws the other half away for them to get. But little does he know, the baby elephant stayed behind and took the other half from behind his back. This made me laugh. I think it's a cute scene. Daphne seems surprised that they get to see the animals so soon, but isn't so pleased with the bugs and the humidity in the air. Daphne pulls out a bottle of hairspray, which she says helps to provide a firm hold and kills insects. We see a new character arrive. His name is Lloyd Mbuku. Sorry if I butchered the name. A souvenir t-shirt salesman, and he's looking for his pet, Jacko, who we see on Scooby's heads. We are then introduced to our captain, Robbie Kumbazi. He explains that they've come at a bad time and that the animals on the preserve seem to be thinning out. He explains that Dr. Joan Goodfew has come down to try and find out what's going on. This is obviously a parody of Jane Goodall, who is known as an expert on chimpanzees and has worked on conservation and animal welfare. Joan Goodfew arrives and mentions she's been tagging the animals to track their habits, but they've disappeared, leaving their tags behind. Joan blames the civilization for frightening the creatures away. She doesn't agree with video safaris at all, and then she leaves. Captain Robbie mentions that she must not have heard about the demons warning. This scares Shaggy. Captain Robbie explains that the stories have come back from the Akuzi River about shape-shifting jungle demons. Apparently they're angry about the disappearances of the animals and attack in the form of ferocious beasts. Looks like the gang have another mystery on their hands. The gang are on the boat going along the river. We see behind the boat Scooby and Shaggy just relaxing in a life preserver attached to the back. Daphne and Velma notice there aren't any animals on the shoreline. Captain Robbie mentions there were loads a few months ago and that there's a watering hole where there's normally loads of animals. A crocodile tries to eat Scooby and Shaggy and they run back to the boat along the rope. Fred mentions that he's got a good shot of them. Later we see Fred reviewing his camera and notices a glowing lion in the background. We then hear creepy music. The captain steers away from the creepy side of the river, but the rapids are too fast, causing the boat to be moved off course and heading towards the waterfall. The boat goes down the waterfall and the gang find themselves alone on land west of the Akuzi River. Scooby finds Jacko's beret and starts to cry, worrying that his friend has been hurt. Before he can worry too much, Captain Robbie, Lloyd and Jacko appear. Jacko takes back his beret and sits on Scooby's back. Daphne worries about where the honeysuckers are. Velma finds them behind a bush, sat on a bench. The honeysuckers tell them that they were just reminiscing because it reminded them of their wedding night at Niagara Falls. Fred notices that they are just so darn chipper. Daphne finds a wallet and Jacko runs and takes it back to Lloyd, who it belongs to. We then see more of the animals glowing yellow and the weird music starts again. They decide to follow along the river back to the preserve. As they're walking, Daphne tells Velma that inside Lloyd's wallet there's a police badge. He must be undercover, but why? Is he also investigating the disappearances? They find a watering hole and there's actually animals around it. They seem pretty friendly and Jacko plays with them. Unfortunately, there's only 2 animals, which for a watering hole isn't very many at all. We see Shaggy, Scooby and Jacko playing water sports with the animals, just as Joan Goodfew says she frowns on fraternization between man and beast. Velma thinks it's quite a coincidence that Joan just happens to be where they are, in the middle of where the demon animals are. To be fair, she said she was tracking the animals, and there's 2 animals at the watering hole, so it's not quite as suspicious as Velma makes it out to be, in my opinion. Captain Robbie tells them that it's too hot to carry on walking. They'll need to rest until it cools down. They make a sort of camp and put their bags and valuables up on vines, something Daphne learnt from Bonfire Girls. Something else interesting that we learn about one of the members of the gang. I like these little glimmers into their past, or even their lives outside of mystery solving. Daphne mentions that it's strange that even though the animals are so scarce, there's loads of bugs. The gang, Lloyd and Jacko, Captain Robbie and the Honeysuckers are all around a campfire and they're suddenly surrounded by demoned animals. They split up and run in different directions. After the chase, they notice that Captain Robbie is reading a map. They ask him about it, as he said previously that he didn't have a map. Captain Robbie explains that it's a map of this side of the river. He has a claim to a secret uranium field on this land that he doesn't want them to know about. Lloyd comes over telling them that he can't find Jacko anywhere. Shaggy looks around and realises he can't find Scooby either. They walk around looking for both Scooby and Jacko. Daphne and Velma use this as the perfect time to ask Lloyd about the police badge. He explains that he is Sergeant Inspector Mbuku, Malawi Police, and he's investigating the animals' disappearances. He also explains that he's undercover, which is why he couldn't just tell them that. Fred spots Jacko, but he's glowing yellow and acting aggressive. Lloyd tries to talk to Jacko and sings him a little song, but Jacko acts aggressive towards him. Velma has an idea and puts Shaggy's headphones onto Jacko and plays Too Cute to Forget by the Mystery Kids. We see that Jacko goes back to normal now that he can't hear the weird music. Fred asks why Jacko is still glowing and Daphne replies that he is wearing Complexion Glow with Aloe, which is a great makeup base on Halloween. Talking of Halloween, who's excited for Halloween and what are you going to do for it? Let me know by DMing me on Instagram at meddlingpodcast or comment on my website meddlingpodcast.com or email me at feedback@meddlingpodcast.com. Shaggy calls out for Scooby, and Jacko signals that he wants them to follow him. The gang realise that these shapeshifters they've been warned about are just animals covered in makeup and hyped up by the weird music. They find themselves at the river and see a boat docked. Dr. Goodfew appears. She seems to think the cargo boat belongs to them, and the gang think it belongs to her, so they're no closer to finding out who's behind this. Honey Honeysucker says the boat gives her the creeps and that they should just leave it alone. Fred decides that they should go on the boat and explore. They go down into the boat and we can hear Scooby wailing. We see all the animals in cages in the boat. They let the animals out and they act friendly like they normally would. Shaggy finds Scooby and lets him out. We see them hug as they've obviously missed each other. I think it's a really sweet moment. Daphne says she thinks the Honeysuckers are behind all this, and they start to run away, but they are closely followed by the animals who block their exit. Lloyd puts them under arrest. Velma decides they must be poachers, but they say they don't harm the animals. However, Honey Honeysucker mentions that there are a lot of people in the States who want exotic pets. Daphne mentions that keeping them as pets would harm them all, and Dr. Goodfew mentions that now, thanks to the gang, they won't have to worry about that. Daphne and Velma mention the reason there were so many bugs and no animals, it was because bugs are impervious to sound, and that the sound is what controlled the animals. Velma shows them that there was a remote transmitter on Henry's shoulder which activated transmitted equipment on the boat, and this is why they were always so lovey-dovey. It was used to hypnotise the animals into being scary. We see Lloyd take the Honeysuckers away as they argue about who thought the kids were meddling and that they should have gone to Niagara Falls instead. The gang gets on the boat the next day, and Daphne mentions that Fred is the hero for getting all the footage of the animals and documenting it. Fred mentions Daphne is the hero for figuring out it was the Honeysuckers and asking how she knew. Daphne mentions that with all the bugs, humidity and flesh-eating bugs, it's perfect for an adventure but not a romantic honeymoon. We see the animals performing for Fred's video, and Daphne asks Scooby if he knows what they're saying. Scooby shrugs and says his catchphrase, Scooby-Dooby-Doo. Okay, so this was the 8th episode of What's New Scooby-Doo. My best bit was the fact that Shaggy had a mixtape of a lot of the songs we've heard previously in the series. The songs that we've heard were It's a Rad Rad World from There's No Creature Like Snow Creature, Too Cute to Forget by the Mystery Kids from It's Mean, It's Green, It's the Mystery Machine, and also Here I Come, Vegas by Lindsay Pagano from Riva Las Vegas. I just thought it was a nice callback to the previous episodes, and you all know how much I love the music from What's New Scooby-Doo. The worst bit was that the innocent animals were hypnotised and made to do things they didn't want to do, and also that they were going to be sold in the States as pets, although it's important to highlight that this does happen and that it is wrong. The funniest bit was when the baby elephant took the other half of Shaggy's sandwich. It just made me laugh. Also, Scooby's interactions with Jacko made me laugh. I like the two together as friends, they make a funny duo. My favourite supporting character was Jacko. He was so cute and funny. I also liked the bond that Scooby and Jacko had, and that they seemed to become fast friends. Also, the cute family reunion with Jacko and the other monkeys that look like Jacko. I liked it when Velma put the headphones on Jacko and he starts dancing to Too Cute to Forget as well. This is the end of my 8th podcast episode. Thank you for listening. I wonder if you thought the same as my best, worst and funniest bits. Was Jacko your favourite supporting character of this episode? Whether you agreed or disagreed, I'd love to know your thoughts about this episode, and I may even feature them in my next episode. The next episode will be Season 1, Episode 9, She Sees Sea Monsters by the Seashore, so get ready to listen to the next podcast. Just to let everyone know that there is a link in any of the episode descriptions to the transcript for that particular episode, or you can just go to my website and go to the blog page and pick the episode you want. If you want to ask any questions or even just mention anything you liked about this episode, you can go to my website, meddlingpodcast.com, that's meddlingpodcast.com, or you can email me at feedback@meddlingpodcast.com. I'd love to hear any of your thoughts about Scooby-Doo, whether it's this episode, another episode, or Scooby-Doo in general. Thanks for listening, and stay groovy!